Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. All right. Now, the question this video will answer is, what does the Constitution have in place to protect our country from becoming a dictatorship or an autocracy or an authoritarian type government? There are a few things in place because remember, the framers of the Constitution, the founders of this country, they left England because they did not want to live under a monarch. They didn't want to live under a king, some person like Trump. And Trump has made it very clear that this is what he wanted to do by the friends he keep, by the words he's spoken, the way he governed the last time, and people who work for him confirm that he is fascist in nature. So it is not outlandish to think that he will attempt to establish an autocracy or dictatorship. And so the framers were very concerned about this, and they put checks and balances in the Constitution. So again, the short answer is yes, our Constitution does protect us against this. But I'm going to tell you, we're going to experience some pain before the Constitution is able to reel Trump in. All right? And that's because he controls the Senate, and they may, by the time you hear this video, may have control of the House as well. I don't know. So he would be in a position where he controls the executive branch, the legislative branch, as well as the judicial branch, especially the United States Supreme Court. All right, so let's get into this. The first thing I want you to realize and never to forget, the preamble of the Constitution has these words in it: we the people. We the people. So it's really the American people who really controls the United States of America. Hey, family, do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African-American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zone calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful together. Now, many of you will say, and I understand why you say it, no, it's the billionaires, it's the oligarchs, it is the corporations, it is all these other folks. But at the end of the day, it is we, the people. And the power that we have, the ultimate power that we have that ensures that we're able to continue to control this country is the power of the vote. The power of the vote. I'm well aware of the Citizens United case that gave corporations this oversized influence with their money to control our government. But we still have the power of the vote. So we, the people, control this country. And I don't want you to ever forget that. We, the people, us 400 and something million Americans, we control this country, not the corporations, not the politicians. You and I, Okay, regular American citizens. Now, the first check and balance in the United States Constitution is the separation of powers. It provides checks and balances for us. So, Article 1 of the United States Constitution establishes the legislative branch. Article 2 establishes the executive branch. And Article 3 establishes the judicial branch. All right, let's take a brief look at those three different branches of government. All right, now, I hope you got your pens and papers because you're going to need to take some notes. All right, so Section 7 of Article 1 requires all bills, particularly those related to taxation and spending, to originate in the House, the chamber closest to the people, to ensure no unilateral control over national finances. So Trump, this is a check and balance, Trump will not have control over taxing and spending. Those bills must originate in the House. Now, I am really hoping that the Democrats flip the House just to provide a hardcore check on Trump's power. Because again, taxing and spending must originate, those bills must originate in the House. And if Hakeem Jeffries is Speaker of the House, he will have a lot of control to check some of Trump's power as it relates to, again, taxing and spending. And we know that Trump wants to give his rich buddies more tax breaks that really don't benefit the middle class. All right. Section 8 gives Congress the authority and power to declare war, to raise up armies, to coin money, and to regulate commerce. That too is a check on Trump's power. So he cannot declare war. That can only come through the United States Congress. All right, that's really, really, really important. He is commander in chief, but he cannot declare war. Now, he still can take our nation into war, but Congress eventually must declare that war if it is a sustained war. Also, he cannot regulate commerce. He cannot oversee commerce, and that is something that he has expressed wanting to do, right? He has talked about even putting directly under him the Federal Reserve. Well, he cannot regulate commerce because that is, pursuant to the Constitution, a job of Congress. So that is another check on his power. All right, then we come to Article 2. And again, it has to do with the executive branch, which is the branch that he has the most control over because he is the top executive of the country. All right. So Section 2 of Article 2 says that he will be the commander in chief and he will lead the military. But as I just said, he cannot declare war. Now let's turn our attention to Article 3, the judicial branch. This branch, Trump does not control this branch. This branch has to do with judges, federal judges, and especially the United States Supreme Court. Now, Trump does nominate people to become Supreme Court justices and federal judges and so on, but he needs the Senate to confirm those nominees. Now, that is going to be an issue because the GOP controls the Senate. So because they control the Senate, they're not going to have many problems getting their nominees confirmed. Now, because the Democrats can filibuster his nominees, Trump will have some difficulty getting them confirmed, unless they do something that Biden was not willing to do, and that is change the filibuster rule to allow for simply a majority vote to get these judges or justices confirmed. See, Biden wasn't willing to do that. I know Trump and the GOP will be willing to do that. They will just change the filibuster rule to accomplish their goals. So just expect them to change the filibuster rule, at least as it relates to confirming U.S. Supreme Court nominees, at least with them. Now, some of the members of the court are in their 70s, mid-70s. For example, Sotomayor, as well as Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. So with the GOP having control of the Senate and Trump being the president, maybe Sam Alito or maybe Clarence Thomas will retire so that Trump can replace them with another conservative. So I read an article today that says Sotomayor will not retire. And I think she's being smart about that, because if she retired now, then she would give Trump the opportunity to put 7 conservatives on the court. So she is just going to try to make it out. And remember, they can serve for life upon good behavior. So he doesn't have control over the judicial branch, Article 3, but he does get to choose the judges and justices with the Senate's confirmation. Now, this is real important that you understand what I said in the beginning, which is we the people, because in just 2 years, we're going to be going back to the polls, and we got to vote in overwhelming numbers. Remember, impact voting, so that we can definitely take some of this control over Congress away from Trump. All right. If he ends up having control over the House, then in 2026, we can vote overwhelmingly and take that control away from him. If he has control over the Senate, we can vote overwhelmingly and take that control from him. So the ultimate check on his power, and any president's power, again, is we the people. Don't forget that, we the people. I keep stressing that because I want you to realize the power that you have so that you don't feel powerless and fear. All right, federalism. Article 4, Section 4. Now, let me explain what federalism is. Our government is set up in 2 tiers, the federal government and then the states. All right, that's federalism. And Section 4 of Article 4 guarantees each state a Republican form of government and protection against invasion and domestic violence. So each state has a constitutional right to be basically its own government, right? Its own sovereign. So think of the states as sovereigns. They're like little sovereign nations that make up the United States. And this may be the most important check on Trump's power, because if he tried to do something to change the entire country, the states can say no, especially the blue states, right? And they, again, no, we're not going along with that. In fact, I read an article yesterday that many blue states have already been meeting since his election and sort of planning out and mapping out how they would respond if he tried to do certain things. So again, remember, the states are sovereign. They are sovereign. They are part of the United States of America. But as we saw with the Civil War, they can secede from the Union, especially if they feel the national government is taking them in a direction that they don't want to go. So I think that is the ultimate check on Trump, quite frankly. All right. The 10th Amendment, right along with the states' powers, it specifically reserves to the states all powers not delegated to the federal government. All right. So everything, look at it this way. The powers of the federal government are enumerated. They're listed. All right. What their powers are, because the framers wanted to limit the power of the federal government. So it listed what powers it has. And all the powers that are not listed are reserved for the states. So again, states have a lot of power pursuant to the 10th Amendment and pursuant to Article 4, Section 4. So because of federalism, that also provides a pretty strong check on what Trump can do. Now, we all know that our Congress is divided up in 2 chambers, the House and the Senate. That is also a check on Trump's power, right? Because even if he can get something done through the Senate, then the House can check it, and vice versa. But it looks like this time, if the Democrats can flip the House, that the Democrats will be able to check what the Senate can do. Thus, it can check what Donald Trump can get done. All right, so there are some built in, because keep in mind, the framers would have, quite frankly, they would fear Trump because he is exactly what they built the Constitution to prevent. They didn't want to be under another king. They came over here to get away from the King of England. And here now Trump is trying to be a king. So he's going to run into some resistance from the United States Constitution. All right. Now, let's suppose Trump wanted to amend the Constitution. That's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough. It would require 2/3 of both the House and Senate. And those numbers are not there. Those numbers are not there. He does not control 2/3 of either chamber. The other way is if 2/3 of state legislatures, he doesn't have those numbers either, right? Because of the 50 states, the GOP does not control 2/3 of them. So that will limit his ability, if he so desired, or if MAGA so desired, to amend the Constitution in any way. It would be very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, just based on the blank letter of the Constitution, just based on the blank letter, just based on the plain language of the United States Constitution. I guess this is a good time to say, though, there are 6 members on the United States Supreme Court. They're very pro-Trump, and we see their willingness to rubber stamp a lot of what the GOP, what MAGA intends to do. So there's always that caveat. All right, now, another limit on Trump are civil liberties and civil rights. And let's talk for a second about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Now, the framers, again, were so fearful of a monarch or a dictator or an autocrat that the members, those 55 delegates, would not ratify the Constitution until there were some individual protections. Again, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, I'm talking about the most salient ones. Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Seventh Amendment, Eighth Amendment, very important amendments to curtail the power of somebody just like Trump. Let's take the First Amendment, for example, right? The right of the press, the right of free speech, the right to protest, the religious clauses that are in the First Amendment. Those, again, are all designed to curtail the power of an autocratic type president. Now, we see Trump's autocratic and fascist ways when he's constantly attacking the media. A few days before he was elected, he even said that he wouldn't mind if someone shot through the media trying to get to him. And so when you see a president who's so antagonistic to a free press, to the media, that's a fascist tendency. Can you imagine living in this country and, like Russia, Trump controlled all the state media, all the news outlet? Can you imagine that? And the only information we're getting is coming from the White House, coming from MAGA? Can you just imagine that? Well, they put in place the First Amendment to protect us from that. Now, MAGA is trying to control the media in other ways, basically by buying them up, by buying up these media companies, right? Elon Musk has obviously bought up Twitter, named it X. I read a report, I don't know how true it is, that he's also interested in buying CNN. So, the guy has so much money that he could just go around buying up these media companies, these news networks, and basically they have complete control. So now, I guess it would be hard to stop that, with the exception of whether or not he is trying to establish some sort of monopoly. But that would be something that the federal government would have to stop. And who's over the federal government right now? Trump and Elon Musk. But it's still in place. The First Amendment is still in place to protect us from having no media. The media is really important, although in this election, I feel like the media normalized a lot of what Trump did. Okay? That's for another conversation. But that's the First Amendment. Second Amendment, very important. I believe very strongly in the Second Amendment. As an African American, I believe African Americans, law-abiding African Americans, should be armed. But I also believe we should be informed, which happens to be the name of another YouTube channel that I have. It's called Armed and Informed. All right, go over there and subscribe. There is videos. There are videos over there having to do with firearms and the law and so on. Because again, I believe very strongly in the Second Amendment. All right. All right. Fourth Amendment. I mean, the Fourth Amendment is really important. That stops Trump from being able to just send law enforcement into our homes and arrest us without probable cause or without a warrant. The general rule is before law enforcement can arrest anyone, they need a warrant, unless there are some exceptions, what we call exigent circumstances. All right. The same is true with searching someone. So we know Trump has promised retribution to his political enemies. Well, those people have protections under the United States Constitution, under the Fourth Amendment, under the Fifth Amendment, which prohibits the state from forcing someone to incriminate themselves, or the Sixth Amendment, which forces the government to have to provide a lawyer for somebody that they have detained or arrested or that are facing adversarial legal proceedings. And then there's the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. So think about it this way. Let's say Donald Trump sent DOJ or the FBI to Liz Cheney's house without a warrant. Okay? Now, the Bill of Rights should kick in and prevent some things. It should prevent them from going in her house and arresting her. It should prevent them from forcing her to give a statement. It should prevent her from having to talk with them without a lawyer. It would prevent them from placing her in some place that exacts cruel and unusual punishment. And there are all other types of due process rights and so forth that she would have, which is why we shouldn't right now be panicked because of the Constitution. But we know Trump even talked about terminating the Constitution. If he were to do that, then it would be time to panic. Point blank. Then it would be time to panic. All right? Because none of these checks and balances and protections that we have would be in place. And for us African Americans, if he terminated the Constitution, that would get rid of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So legally, the government could enslave us again. The government could stop us from voting. The government could say you no longer have any equal rights, or that you're no longer citizens. You no longer have due process rights. So it is incumbent upon us, we the people, to defend and protect the United States Constitution, because it is the only thing between us and complete tyranny. All right? And that's why I'm doing this video. All right, let's talk about the 19th Amendment. That would be done away with too if Trump terminated the Constitution, and it gives women the right to vote. The 22nd Amendment. Now that's really, really, really important. And that amendment makes Donald Trump really a lame duck president. He cannot be elected again. The 22nd Amendment says no person can be elected more than twice. He has been elected twice. This is it. This is it. Now that's a real bright spot. This is it. This is his last time. Now, who knows whether or not at some point between now and the end of his term that he'll say, you know what, I'm president for life. We're not going to put that past him. He could do that. He could do that. And from what I'm being told, from what I see, based on my understanding, there aren't people in his administration who would try to talk him out of that. Those people are gone. And they warned us not to elect him. A lot of people ignored their warnings, unfortunately. So this is the end of him ever again being president of the United States, unless he does something untoward, like declaring himself president for life. All right. Let's talk about the military. All right. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress, as I said earlier, the exclusive power to declare war, although the president is commander-in-chief. Now, the reason I wanted to mention the military here is because the military is under civilian rule. But we have heard Trump say that he would want to use the military against the enemies from within the country. Not just the enemies, foreign enemies, but in his mind, enemies within the country. Who in the world could he be talking about? Is he talking about Black Lives Matter? Is he talking about leftists and liberals? Is he talking about what he considers Marxists and communists in the country? Who are these? Who are these? Is he talking about his political enemies? So who are these enemies that he's talking about and that he said he would want to be able to use the military against? Wow. This is crazy. But if the Constitution and the checks and balances that the framers put in place hold steady, he won't be able to do that. He will not be able to legally, constitutionally use the military against American citizens, except in a few situations. All right, let's talk about it. So there is the Posse Comitatus Act. It is 18 U.S.C. Section 1385. Again, the Posse Comitatus Act, which explicitly prohibits the president from using the Army and the Air Force against American citizens. It can't be done except for several exceptions that I'm going to show you in just a moment. So when Trump talks about using the military against American citizens, he's going to run straight into the Posse Comitatus Act that will be there to stop him. All right. But there are some exceptions. OK, first, the National Guard. Right now, the Posse Comitatus Act does apply to the National Guard if Trump federalizes the National Guard. Then he still couldn't use it to go after his political enemies or whatever he meant when he said the enemies from within. But there is the Insurrection Act of 1807, and it is a specific exception to the Posse Comitatus Act. It allows presidents to deploy federal troops domestically in cases of insurrection. How ironic is that when he led an insurrection? So if he deemed something to be an insurrection, then he could then use the military against those insurrectionists, although he's the chief insurrectionist. All right. All right. He could also use it if there's domestic violence that makes it impractical to enforce U.S. laws by regular judicial means. He also could use it if a state governor requests the use of the military to deal with a situation where the governor doesn't have control and can't control the state. Then that governor could pick up the phone and call Trump and say, we need federal troops. All right. Now, one situation that comes to mind in that instance is the border. All right. Let's say one of the border states, one of the border governors, like my state here, Texas. Let's say Greg Abbott said, Mr. President, we don't have control over the borders. I think it's time for us to deploy the 101st, the 101st Airborne Division or some other division of the military, some other Green Berets or somebody to come and help us gain control of the border. Well, he could do that. All right. I'm sure there'd be all kind of legal fights regarding that, but, he'd have at least federal law on his side for doing that. I don't want to see that. I was in the military and I know the lethal force of our military, and it just doesn't make sense to me to use it domestically. It just doesn't. And what gives me some solace is knowing that the generals in the military have been meeting and discussing what they would do if Trump gave them some unlawful order. So that tells us that the military knows the threat that the country faces from a Trump presidency. And they are trying to get their heads around what to do if that happens. Because again, if Trump were to set aside the Constitution and the military became his military, like some of these autocratic countries, I mean, that's just, the country's over at that point. I mean, we're done. I mean, we're literally done. This is no longer America. This is something else at that point. I pray none of this happens. So what we got to really do is do everything we can to protect and to defend the United States Constitution. It is the best means to check the power of the presidency of Donald Trump. And of course, as I said earlier, to vote. We, the people, we ultimately control this country. All right. We must vote. So the thing I want you to remember is, yes, the United States Constitution does provide checks and balances on Donald Trump as president. All right. Also remember, again, and I can't say it enough, this is that we, the people, we're the ultimate authority and power in this country because we have the power to select or elect the folks who represent us. And along those lines, the third thing to remember is 2026 will be here before you know it. And we need to be organized and we need to vote in overwhelming numbers to check Trump's power. Because between now and then, we're going to go through some pain. We're going to go through some pain. Our country is going to be transformed in major ways. And so what we've got to do is try to stop as much of that transformation as possible. And then at the same time, vote people in who will stop it altogether. And then we'll just have 2 more years of Trump, the remaining 2 years of his presidency. And that's assuming that he will leave office at the end of his term, his 4-year term. All right. So yay for the Constitution. All right. The framers, they contemplated this very moment and they put in place checks and balances. And we need them now more than ever. All right. So I'm Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Thank you for watching this video. And until the next time, peace.